Welcome to From the Ground Up to Equality podcast, a podcast series brought to you by Arab Council Australia and funded by DCJ. I'm your host, Ally Hijazi, family law solicitor and project manager From the Ground Up to Equality. I want to thank you for joining us on this 6-part journey. In our last episode, we spoke about what domestic violence is and how it shows up. Today, we're looking at a more specific type of domestic and family violence, one that is just as dangerous but is probably a bit harder to see, and that is coercive control. Coercive control refers to a pattern of behaviour that allows one person to exercise control and dominance over another through a range of abuse tactics that they can be psychological, emotional, financial, and other forms of abuse. Coercive control manifests itself in different ways and in different relationship contexts. Examples differ from one relationship to another, and that's what makes it particularly hard to recognise. So what does coercive control look like? It might be someone checking your phone messages, telling you who you can and can't talk to. It might be demanding to know where you are all the time, controlling your money, or accusing you of cheating merely because you put on makeup or answered a phone call. In some cases, it may be disguised as love. You might hear things such as, "I just want to protect you. I'm just looking out for you. I just know what's best for you." In other times, it may be pure intimidation. "If you don't do this, you're never going to see the children. No one will believe you. Think about what your family will say. You're going to shame the family." The patriarchy exists in every society. Therefore, in most households, certain behaviours which may constitute coercive control may be further complicated by cultural ideas around masculinity, honour and privacy. What one person might call control, another might see as tradition or leadership. But let's be clear, leadership is not domination, and love should never come with fear. The truth is, coercive control often begins in a really subtle manner. Small restrictions, harmless seeming rules. Over time, however, that pattern of dominance strips that person's autonomy away, and that is where the problem lies. This kind of abuse is often described by victim survivors as an invisible cage. It's something that they can't actually see, but they can feel it. And even if there's no physical violence, that fear is there. It's constantly there. Everywhere they go, it's there. The trauma is real, and sadly, coercive control often escalates into physical violence if left unchecked. And that is why it is so important to understand it and, where possible, to intervene, and to intervene early. In New South Wales, coercive control became criminalised in July 2024. This was a significant moment, and it marked a deeper understanding of the insidious nature of domestic and family violence. For a long time, advocates had put pressure on governments and legislative systems to recognise this sometimes really difficult form of domestic and family violence. And the reason is legal systems just did not have the tools to recognise this slow-burning psychological abuse. Now the law recognises and acknowledges that a pattern of behaviour that is meant to control a person, or is intended to control a person, is just as dangerous, sometimes more dangerous, than a single act of physical violence. While the law is changing, community understanding still lags behind, and that is why education around coercive control is still critical. Within CALD communities like ours, many people aren't familiar with the term of coercive control. Even professionals, doctors, teachers, service providers might not recognise the red flags if they're filtered through this idea of what is culturally normal. That's why responses need to be both trauma-informed, which means that survivors are feeling safe, heard and understood, or empowered, and culturally informed, so that their experiences are not dismissed, mistranslated or misunderstood. We must meet people where they are, Speak their language, understand their context, and help them name what they've lived through without blaming them for not naming it sooner. When we talk about coercive control, we must also acknowledge how coercive control also affects men. Because while men are far more likely to be perpetrators of domestic and family violence, some men, especially within minority communities, can also be victims of control and may really struggle with the idea of reporting it because it really goes against their identity of what it means to be a man and the power that they must hold. During the course of running From the Ground Up to Equality project, we worked with both men and women because changing a culture of control requires honest conversations with everybody, with everyone that is a member of that community. Men are not the enemy, but patriarchy and unchecked power is a shared problem that harms us all. Men are also victims of gender inequality and gender stereotypes, and the work that we've done in From the Ground Up to Equality recognised that and validated those experiences of men. And it's perhaps most important to note that it was for that reason that the work we've done has been such a success. So what can you do if you suspect that someone you know is a victim of coercive control? Don't ask why are you still with them, but instead ask, how can I be there for you? How can I support you? Offer to listen to them without pressure or judgment. Believe their story. Regardless of whether they can show you evidence of the abuse, believe them when they tell you that they are feeling fear and they are abused by their partner. And refer them to services that understand their cultural and emotional needs. But most importantly, the best way to show up for somebody in your life or for yourself is to educate yourself and build awareness about what constitutes domestic and family violence, and more specifically, what behaviours, which are often considered normal in some cultures, can now amount to coercive control. Coercive control thrives in silence, and the only way to disarm it is to name it. And the only way to name it is to educate ourselves about what behaviours that we maybe once upon a time considered normal now amounts coercive control and can constitute a legal offence within the state of New South Wales. In our next episode, we'll confront another very important question, and that is, why don't victims just leave? We'll unpack the real barriers that people face and the real support that they need. So if anything in this episode has brought up something distressing for you, or if you are concerned about your own relationship or a relationship of someone that you know and care for, please contact 1-800-RESPECT or go to arabcouncil.org.au for further information. If anything in this podcast has piqued an interest and you want to explore those concepts further, please head over to our show notes for further information and pamphlets. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.